Hello everybody, it's Carpo again. I just made a video of this particular subject and it was about 10 minutes long, and in the end it was too large to upload, and that's why I'm going back to this format, this audio format. It makes it easier for me because, well, I don't get lost in my own conversation and forget how long I've been talking, and I do apologize for my long-windedness. I've had people say that I should slow down a little bit the way I talk, but that's not the way I talk. I've heard hour-long conversations that really could be condensed down to 10 minutes, and I know that people's time is precious, and to drag things out and to pause between every word is just a way to slow down the information, to spend more time listening. But having a pause between what you say, of course, is important so people can consider. But that's not what I'm all about. So, where is Superman is the question that I wanted to ask, and this is a very important question to me. What I mean by this is all this awareness and all these claimed experiences that can bring us to a certain level of awareness. There seem to be a lot of varying opinions on exactly what this state of awareness brings us or brings to the table. So to give you an example, one might say if you meditate long enough, then you will not need food. Or if a person says if you dedicate yourself enough to these teachings, you would be able to levitate or fly. Another person says that this particular practice will allow you to see the complete truth. Now, through all of this, there's not been one person through history that I've seen through my research who has been able to express or prove this beyond a doubt. Now, I realize empirical evidence is only to the individual what they're willing to take it for. But my example would be that there are many claims of yogis through history who say can fly, or that cannot be killed, or have reached a degree where they can levitate. After researching all of these, I find that many of the levitations were done through means of a metal or wooden staff, let's say with a pipe underneath it to hold them up. We want to believe as humans that these things are possible. Let's take the Indian rope trick, for example. A man blows his little flute and the rope rises up from the basket into the air, and a kid climbs up to the top of the rope. The story goes that the kid disappears, and then the man climbs up to get the kid, and there's a great history behind it. And they still do this rope trick, and you can go to places and see it. But all Western approaches to rationalize or understand it have shown that it's a fraud many of the times. And many of the things that have been claimed to be true are nothing more than a fraud. Now, that's not to say that they're done to get one over on people or to be mean. It's more along the lines of this mysteriousness that we have as humans, this aura of mystery that we like to share with others. But the Western approach kind of ruins that for some people. They say, why do you have to be so, why do you have to pick everything apart as Westerners? Well, because people want to understand how things work and if they really work. People might say it takes the fun out of it. I don't see it that way. I see it as putting more fun into the things that we can really work towards. Now, where is Superman in the sense that if all of these things have really happened, how come I have never seen anyone levitate? How come I have never seen anyone fly? How come I have never seen anyone reach a degree of invisibility? I've heard more than a few people claim that they've become invisible, or that they've turned invisible. I can't dispute that. But they can't prove it either. So it's kind of a catch-22, and we're stuck at a crossroads. My thought is that anyone who reaches a certain state of awareness would have nothing to prove, therefore would not try to show the world how to attain that. But also, I think that a person who had that degree of intellect and that degree of awareness would want to share that with the world. So I can ramble on about that, but what I'm saying here is it's the same as UFOs to me. I believe in UFOs. I do believe that there are extraterrestrials that have visited or are visiting this planet. But I don't know the details, and that's where I draw the line. I believe that there may be these grays that they talk of, but I don't know if they're multidimensional, or if they're aliens, or if they are android-type robots with, human skin. I just do not know. And I've heard stories from every side of it. What I do know is the only thing I can know is that they exist. But how can I even know that? I've seen some strange things in my time, and I've heard enough stories to believe that there is something, but trying to understand whether it's multidimensional or universal or terrestrial is, it leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm bringing UFOs in to say, even if UFOs came and landed on in every major city around the world, how much would it take? How much empirical evidence would it take for all the people to say, okay, these beings exist? There would still be a handful of people, especially in the US, who would say, oh man, that's just a government plot to convince us that there's aliens, or that they're just holograms. I'm not saying that that would be right or wrong. I'm saying that no matter how much we're proven something might be true, right in our face, we're still going to doubt ourselves if it goes against our paradigm of belief. Not all of us, but some of us. Now, in the same way, if you couldn't have a UFO land and prove to people UFOs exist, how would you expect a person to believe that there's some sort of awareness or Satori or state? Satori is a good example. Satori is the Hindu version of awareness or awakening. A Satori would be out of the blue, you have a meditational experience, and all of a sudden the world becomes totally different to you. You start to see things for what they are, but that's just my description. I don't know if my Satori was the same Satori that others speak of. I don't know if I've even had a Satori, but I feel like I have. This is where the problem comes in. We have so many different people with so many different views of what these states of awareness are. Now, really the root of why I'm making this little video here is because I want to know what other people think the ultimate goal is. Now, I don't mean the ultimate goal as in trying to attain or gain something, but there are folks who believe that this life is important, that we need to live this life to the best because this is a heaven or hell depending on how we view it. There are others that believe that this whole life should be dedicated to being as good as we can so we can live for eternity in the afterlife, but to serve God. Then there are others who believe that God is within us all and that we are reincarnated, so we want to do the best that we can in this life so that we have less lives to live towards reaching our bodhisattva state, if you will, or excelling beyond the need for human lives. And when I pick all these apart, I start to wonder, so we're working and working and working with no memory of our history, trying to be better so we can stop living. And all of these questions bring more questions to mind. I just can't stop and just say, okay, this must be the way it is, or okay, I agree with this. It's a very complicated thing, and to agree with something merely because it feels comfortable, it doesn't work for me. Sometimes I feel like an empiricist, like I pick things apart, and like I said yesterday, I feel like a wet blanket often. I'll come in and somebody will be talking about UFOs and genetic manipulation. For example, my mom and I have conversations about UFOs and aliens and whatnot, and I'm just as into it as she is, but I feel like kind of a jerk sometimes because she said that I'm bashing her ideas, and I don't feel that way. I feel in my heart like I'm trying to say, no, this is what I've found probably isn't true, or this isn't agreeing with certain other aspects of the story. But I don't like to be that way because then people think you're picking at them directly. But that's not the case. I'm picking at the whole thing. Ancient Aliens is a show that had a lot of people convinced that these people knew what they were talking about. And I've heard a lot of folks say, just watch Ancient Aliens and you'll know what's going on. I didn't have to do much research behind that show to see that it was mostly bunk, because these people were talking out their ass as if they knew exactly what was going on. Anybody who's watched the show knows who Giorgio Tsoukalos is. He's the guy with the big crazy hair. He has this aura of arrogance about him, about every subject. One example would be when they had these caves in Egypt with the pictures of the humanoid figures with the bird head. He would say something like, and it wasn't just him, it was all of them. They'd say something like, "They drew these pictures. Why would they do that?" And he says, "Because they existed." With just this cocky arrogance that says, duh, it's so obvious. But to anybody who's done any type of research into the occult, we understand that no, there were not probably humans walking around with bird heads. But if you can get your show on television and fool people into thinking that you're right, people will talk about it. So that's why I remain a skeptic, because I want to believe that all these things are true. I want to believe that there's a state of awareness where you can do anything and excel for the need beyond a human form. But I enjoy being a human, and I don't even know in the end why I would want to work towards not being a human. In fact, if reincarnation really is the case, I'm coming back. I'll try again. If what they say is true and life is really that short compared to eternity, then I have the choice, then maybe I will come back. This world isn't so bad. It has ups and downs, and through my own personal research of how things could be or should be, I can find no idealist world. I can find no ideal sense of being that I think would be conducive for everyone to live happily. I just don't think that's a reality. So, to combat this discomfort with being human, we create a lot of things to make ourselves feel better. And that's why there is something to it in my mind, but I don't know what it is, and I'm still waiting for Superman to come and levitate over the city, and I don't know. It's the same thing with the, remote healing. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. And all these things have little points where they work. There is some sort of a force, a chi, a life energy that we can tap into. But can we ever really put a label on it and not market it, but understand it so others can use it as well? Is it something that takes a specific practice, or is it something that just takes dedication to want to help? So I'd love to see a scientific approach put on spirituality, which we're starting to do, to understand how these things work, because there is a huge segment of the population that's not going to believe anything until science tells them it's true. And unfortunately, science operates like a religious entity, that their paradigm of belief is the way it is. If your experiment goes against the current paradigm, it's unacceptable. So many experiments through history have not been accepted merely because they would counter others' discoveries. And that's the world we live in, a world of arrogance where we all want to be right. And it seems like sometimes we're all wrong. Hope you're all doing well, and have a great day. Peace.